Welcome, friends, to a place tucked away in time, a village called Falls Safs. It was a truly beautiful spot, nestled in a green valley. Crystal clear water tumbled down from gentle hills. These waters formed a sparkling river. The river sang a soft song as it flowed past the homes of the villagers. Flowers of every colour bloomed in the meadows. Big, strong trees offered shade from the warm sun. The air was always fresh and sweet. It smelled of pine needles and damp earth. Life in Falls Safs was simple and good. The people of Falls Safs were known far and wide. They were known for their big hearts and ready smiles. If a neighbour needed help, hands were offered without a second thought. If someone was sad, gentle words of comfort were shared. Children played freely in the fields, their laughter echoing like music. They learned early about caring for each other and for their lovely land. Sharing was a way of life. Kindness was the language everyone understood. This made Falls Safs a truly special place, a haven of peace. Every morning the sun would peek over the tall, fiery mountain that stood guard over the valley. This mountain was usually quiet, a majestic silhouette against the blue sky. The villagers respected the mountain. They called it the Sleeping Dragon, for they knew it held great power within. But for many, many years, the dragon had slept soundly. The smoke that sometimes curled from its peak was like soft, sleepy breaths. This peaceful existence allowed the villagers to thrive, to build their homes, and to raise their families in harmony with nature. The days in Falls Safs were filled with purposeful work and joyful moments. Farmers tended their crops, their songs drifting on the breeze. Weavers created colourful fabrics, their looms clicking a steady rhythm. Potters shaped clay into useful bowls and sturdy jugs. Evenings were for stories and songs around warm fires. The elders shared tales of old, and the young ones listened with wide eyes. This was the rhythm of life, a gentle dance of community and contentment. The kindness in their hearts was the strongest thread that bound them all together. In the village of Falls Safs lived a wise old man. His name was Nanegal. He had seen many seasons come and go. His face was a map of wrinkles, each line telling a story of laughter, worry and wisdom. Nanegal's eyes were kind and very observant. He knew the secrets of the forest. He understood the language of the wind and the river. The villagers trusted him deeply. They often sought his advice. He spent many hours sitting quietly, watching the world around him, noticing things others might miss. He felt a deep connection to the land. One bright morning, Nanegal sat on his favourite smooth rock. He looked towards the fiery mountain, the sleeping dragon. He noticed something different that day. The smoke from the mountain's peak was not soft and sleepy. It was darker, thicker, and it puffed out in angry bursts. Tiny tremors like a giant sigh rumbled beneath his feet. He saw birds circling anxiously in the sky, their calls sharp and worried. Nanegal's heart grew heavy. He had seen signs like these before in the ancient stories passed down by his grandparents. He knew these were not good signs. Nanegal continued to watch the mountain for many days. The ground shivered more often now. Small stones would sometimes tumble down the mountain's slopes. The air itself felt tense, holding its breath. The river, usually so clear, began to carry fine, dark ash. The playful squirrels chattered nervously and hid. The usual happy sounds of the forest seemed muted, replaced by an uneasy quiet. Nanegal knew in his soul that the sleeping dragon was stirring. It was no longer content to slumber peacefully. The time of quiet was ending. He gathered his thoughts, his brow furrowed with concern. The villagers needed to be warned. They needed to understand the danger that was slowly but surely approaching their peaceful home. Nanegal felt the weight of this knowledge. It was his duty to speak, to share what his wise eyes had seen and what his old heart understood. He knew it would bring fear, but it was a fear they needed to face together. The safety of Falls Safs, his beloved village, depended on it. Nanigal called all the villagers of Falls Safs to the big meeting tree. His voice, usually calm and gentle, carried a new note of seriousness. He told them what he had seen. He spoke of the angry smoke from the sleeping dragon. He described the trembling earth and the worried animals. He shared the ancient stories of the mountain's fury, of times long ago when it had awakened and brought destruction. As he spoke, a hush fell over the crowd. The happy chatter of children stopped. Faces turned pale. Eyes widened with a dawning understanding. Fear, cold and sharp, began to creep into the hearts of the villagers. They looked towards the mountain. It seemed to loom larger now, more menacing than before. The dark plume of smoke was a clear sign, a warning they could no longer ignore. Some whispered nervously, remembering stories their own grandparents had told. Others clutched their children close. The thought of their beautiful village, their safe homes, being threatened by fire and ash was terrifying. The peace they had known for so long felt suddenly fragile, like a thin piece of glass. The tremors became stronger as the days passed. The ground would shake more violently, making pots rattle on shelves and houses creak. A low, guttural rumble could sometimes be heard from deep within the mountain. It sounded like the growl of an awakening beast. The river flowed darker now, thick with ash. The air itself tasted gritty. Sleep became difficult for many. Nightmares of fire and flowing rock haunted their dreams. The usual joyful songs of the village were replaced by worried murmurs and anxious prayers. The sense of urgency grew with every passing hour. Nanigal watched the fear in his people's eyes. He knew they needed more than just a warning. They needed hope. They needed a plan. He reminded them of their strength, not as individuals, but as a community. He spoke of their history of helping one another, of overcoming challenges by working together. While the fear was real and understandable, he urged them not to let it paralyze them. "The dragon is waking," he said, his voice firm, "but we are the people of Falls Safs. We are strong, we are kind, and together we can face this." Nanigal gathered the strongest and wisest villagers. They sat in a large circle under the meeting tree. The air was thick with worry, but also with a new determination. Nanigal spoke first. He said, "The dragon breathes fire. It sends rivers of hot rock. We cannot stop the dragon from waking, but perhaps we can guide its anger. Perhaps we can protect our homes." He looked around the circle, his eyes meeting each person's gaze. He wanted them to feel the flicker of hope he held within his own heart, a tiny spark against the growing darkness of their fear. Ideas began to flow. Some suggested praying to the mountain spirits. Others thought of digging deep shelters. Then a young builder named Ilara spoke. She was known for her clever mind and strong hands. "What if," she said, her voice clear and steady, "we build a wall? A great strong wall to turn the flow of fire away from our village. A dam, not for water, but for the mountain's rage." The idea hung in the air. A dam? Against a volcano? It sounded impossible. It sounded like a dream. But it was a dream of survival. Nanigal listened carefully to Ilara's idea. He nodded slowly. "A dam," he repeated. "A wall of earth and stone. It would need to be very big. It would need to be very strong. It would take every hand in Falls Safs to build it." He looked at the river that flowed near their village. The river had carved a wide channel over many years. "If the hot rocks flow," Ilara explained, pointing to a rough map she had drawn in the dirt, "they will likely follow the lowest path. If we build a dam across this wide gully here, we might divert the flow towards the empty lands to the west." A buzz of excitement, mixed with trepidation, filled the circle. The plan was daring. The task would be enormous. The fiery mountain rumbled again in the distance as if challenging them. But for the first time since Nanigal's warning, there was a path forward. There was something they could. The villagers looked at each other. They saw the fear, yes, but they also saw a rising courage. They had always worked together. They had always cared for one another. This would be their greatest test. They agreed. They would build the dam. They would protect Falls Safs. The very next morning, as the sun cast long shadows, the work began. Falls Safs transformed into a hive of activity. Nanagal, despite his age, moved among the groups, offering encouragement and wisdom. Ilara, the young builder, took charge of the dam's design. She marked out the lines with strong ropes and wooden stakes. She showed the others where the wall needed to be thickest, where it needed to be tallest. Her voice was confident, and her energy inspired everyone around her. The villagers trusted her vision. They knew she was smart and capable. The strongest men and women of the village formed teams. Some went to the riverbed to gather large, smooth stones. They worked tirelessly, lifting and carrying the heavy rocks. Their muscles ached and sweat poured down their faces, but they did not complain. They knew every stone was a piece of their defense. Other teams went into the forest. They chopped down sturdy trees. They trimmed the branches and dragged the heavy logs to the dam site. These logs would form the strong backbone of the Great Wall, reinforcing the earth and stone. Even the children and the older villagers found ways to help. The children carried water in small buckets to the thirsty workers. They gathered smaller pebbles to fill the gaps between the big stones. Their small hands, though not as strong, were just as important. The elders, who could no longer do heavy lifting, prepared food for everyone. They made hearty stews and baked bread to keep the workers' energy up. They also sang songs of courage and hope, their voices lifting the spirits of those who toiled under the smoky sky. Day after day, the people of Falls Safs worked. They worked from sunrise until the stars appeared. They worked side by side, their movements becoming a steady rhythm of shared purpose. Farmers worked next to weavers, potters worked beside storytellers. Differences were forgotten. All that mattered was the day. All that mattered was saving their home. The growing wall was a testament to their unity. It was built not just of rock and wood, but of sweat, determination, and the unbreakable spirit of a community bound together. Section 6. The Fiery Mountain Awakens. As the dam grew taller and wider, the sleeping dragon grew angrier. The rumbles from within the mountain became deep, thunderous roars. The ground shook almost constantly now, making the work more difficult and dangerous. Plumes of black smoke, thick with ash, billowed high into the sky, blocking out the sun. A rain of fine, gritty ash began to fall, coating everything in a layer of grey. The air grew hotter, and the smell of sulphur like rotten eggs filled their nostrils. The villagers worked with a desperate urgency, their eyes constantly flicking towards the menacing peak. One evening, as the last light faded, a terrifying sound split the air. It was a sound louder than any thunder they had ever heard. The top of the fiery mountain glowed an ominous, fiery red. Then, with a mighty explosion, the dragon truly awoke. A fountain of molten rock, glowing orange and red, shot high into the sky. Rivers of fire like burning snakes began to crawl down the mountain slopes. Fear, raw and powerful, gripped every heart. Some wanted to run, to flee, but where would they go? Their home was here. Their hope was the dam. Panic threatened to scatter them, but Nanagal's voice, strong and steady, cut through the rising chaos. "Stay together," he cried. "The dam is nearly complete. We must hold strong for Falls Safs." Ilara, her face smudged with dirt and ash, rallied the workers. "A little more," she urged, her voice hoarse but firm. "We can do this. We must do this." Inspired by their leaders, the villagers pushed through their fear. They worked through the eerie, flickering light of the erupting volcano. Their movements quick and precise, driven by adrenaline and a fierce love for their village. The heat from the approaching lava flows was intense. The air shimmered. The sounds of the eruption were deafening, a constant roar mixed with the crackling and hissing of the molten rock. The villagers could see the fiery river making its way down the mountain, consuming everything in its path. It was a truly terrifying sight, a vision of destruction. Yet they continued to pile stones, to pack earth, to strengthen their wall. Each movement was a prayer. Each stone laid was an act of defiance against the mountain's fury. They were so close. They just needed a little more time. Section 7, the Wall of Courage, stands strong. The first tendrils of the molten river reached the valley floor. It moved slowly at first, a glowing, viscous mass, then picked up speed as it found the natural slope leading towards Falls Safs. The villagers on the dam watched, their hearts pounding in their chests like war drums. The heat was almost unbearable now. The air crackled with an unseen energy. Their great wall, the product of so much labour and hope, stood waiting. It was their only shield. It was the embodiment of their collective will to survive this terrifying ordeal. Would it be enough? The glowing orange tide of lava, wide and menacing, crept closer and closer to their dam. It hissed and popped, sending up showers of sparks. The front edge of the flow, like a monstrous tongue, finally touched the base of the wall. A collective gasp went up from the villagers. They held their breath, watching, waiting. The lava pushed against the stones and earth. It steamed and sizzled where it met the damp soil packed by countless hands. For a moment, it seemed like the sheer force of the fiery river would simply overwhelm their creation, pushing it aside like a child's toy. But the dam held. The rocks, carefully placed, resisted the pressure. The logs, deeply embedded, provided strength. The packed earth absorbed the initial shock. The lava, finding its path blocked, began to spread out, to pool against the mighty barrier. Slowly, agonizingly, the main flow started to turn. Guided by the curve of the dam Ilara had designed, the river of fire began to shift its course. It moved away from Falls Safs towards the empty western lands, just as they had hoped, just as they had prayed. The Wall of Courage, built by united hands, was working. A cheer, hesitant at first, then growing louder and stronger, erupted from the villagers. Tears streamed down ash-covered faces. Tears of relief, tears of exhaustion, tears of an almost unbelievable joy. The dam was holding, their village was safe. They had faced the fury of the sleeping dragon, and they had not been defeated. They watched as the terrifying river of fire flowed harmlessly away, its destructive power diverted by their ingenuity and their incredible shared effort. The immediate danger had passed, thanks to their remarkable solidarity. Section 8, Victory's Song, a celebration of unity. As the last of the lava flow was safely guided away, and the rumbles from the mountain began to subside, an overwhelming sense of relief washed over Falls Safs. The villagers, tired beyond words, covered in ash and sweat, looked at each other. They saw not just neighbours but heroes. They saw the strength that came from standing together. Slowly, smiles began to break through the grime on their faces. They had done it. They had faced the impossible, and they had won. The air, though still smoky, seemed lighter now, filled with the sweet taste of survival. Nana Eagle gathered everyone once more by the meeting tree, its leaves now dusted with grey ash. "Look around you," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "Look at what we have accomplished." The sleeping dragon roared. It breathed fire, but it did not destroy us. Why? Because we stood together. Because every hand, young and old, strong and not so strong, worked for the good of all. He looked at Ilara with pride, because brave hearts and clever minds showed us the way. This victory belongs to every single one of you. That night, despite their exhaustion, the people of Falls Safs held a celebration. They built a large bonfire, not of fear but of gratitude. They shared the food that was left. They sang songs, not of worry, but of triumph. The children, their earlier fear forgotten, danced in the flickering firelight. The story of the dam, of their incredible effort, was already being told, each person adding their part to the growing legend. They honoured the wise Nanaeagle for his guidance, and the brave Ilara for her ingenious plan that saved them all. The celebration was a testament to their spirit. It was a song of unity. The moral of their incredible story was clear for all to see. When people work together, when they combine their strengths and support one another, they can overcome even the greatest challenges. The fiery mountains still stood, a reminder of the danger they had faced. But the dam also stood, a proud monument to their courage, their hard work, and the unbreakable power of their community spirit. Falls Safs was more than just a village. It was a family, strong and united. Section 9. Echoes of Bravery, the Legacy of Falls Safs. In the days and weeks that followed, life in Falls Safs slowly returned to a new kind of normal. The immediate threat was gone, but the landscape was forever changed. The diverted lava flow had cooled into a vast black rocky plain to the west, a stark reminder of the dragon's power. The air gradually cleared of ash, and the sun shone brightly once more on the resilient village. The villagers worked together again, this time to clean their homes, to clear the fine layer of ash from their fields, and to ensure the river flowed clean and pure once more. The great dam became a landmark. It was a symbol of their incredible achievement. Children would often climb its sturdy slopes, looking out over the valley and then towards the now quiet mountain. Elders would sit in its shade, retelling the story of its construction, ensuring that the younger generations understood the effort and sacrifice involved. They spoke of the fear they had felt, but more importantly, they spoke of the courage they had found within themselves and within each other. The dam was a physical manifestation of their unity, a silent teacher of an invaluable lesson. Nanaeagle and Ilara were forever honoured in the village's history. Nanaeagle's wisdom in recognizing the danger and his unwavering belief in his people became legendary. Ilara's clever design and her steadfast leadership during the dam's construction was celebrated in songs and stories. But the true hero of the tale, as everyone in Falls Safs knew, was the spirit of community itself. It was the willingness of each person to contribute, to face their fears, and to work tirelessly for the common good that had saved them from the fiery breath of the mountain. And so, the story of the sleeping dragon and the mighty dam was passed down from generation to generation in Falls Safs. It served as a constant reminder that no challenge is too great when faced with unity, cooperation, and bravery. The children learned that even in the face of overwhelming odds, hope can be found in working together. The legacy of that terrifying time was not one of fear, but one of empowerment. The people of Falls Safs knew that whatever the future held, as long as they stood together, they could face it, just as they had faced the awakening dragon.